All right, so today I wanted to talk about a tweet from Candace Owens that I thought was very interesting, and obviously, as you can see, it went very viral, 193,000 likes. So I'll read it and then I'll get into it a little more. So she says, I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you find yourself agreeing with the mainstream media, the millionaire celebrities, and the billionaire tech owners, you're not part of the resistance. You're programmed sheep. And this is one of the many things I try and tell people, and so many people just don't understand it. And the thing that I'm getting at is people still think that the political landscape, the political spectrum is the exact same as it was, 10, 20, 30 years ago. They think hardly anything has changed. But what they don't realize is things have changed. I mean, things have changed more in the last 5 to 10 years than they did in the previous 20 or 30. And I think that I know that's an opinion, but I think the numbers would back that up. In fact, I'm very confident the numbers would back that up. And what I mean by that is that, in the 90s and the 2000s, I mean, you take the perfect example. The punk rock bands, well, what was their main message? It was pushing back against the system. It was being anti-government. It was anti, rich corporate class. It was anti, that's basically, I mean, that it was anti-establishment as well. Like they were pushing back against the drug war. They were pushing back against the war, the endless wars, all that kind of stuff. And it's very funny because things have literally gone full circle in that it's the complete opposite these days. It's being punk, at least according to these people, is pro government, pro millionaire celebrities, pro establishment, pro all of these kind of things. They're pro war now because Trump is anti war, so we must be against it, right? And it's very very surprising. And the thing that surprises me the most is that most of these kind of people that claim they're part of the resistance, these are, I mean, a lot of them are millennials. I would say most of them are millennials, but some of them are too young to be millennials. But most of them are millennials, and the millennials are the ones that grew up in the 90s and the early 2000s, early to mid 2000s. So they should be well aware of this kind of stuff. So again, just within the matter of a decade or two, these people have completely changed when it comes to this, and it's very telling in that I think the best thing to point out is that these people have no credibility. They have no credibility. I mean, I'll tell you why. Because they've completely changed their worldview when it comes to this kind of stuff, and they don't acknowledge it. And here's the thing: changing your beliefs on things isn't inherently bad. It's not inherently the worst thing in the world. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you do it and provide no reason for it, then it's bad. And if you do it and pretend that you didn't do it, then it's even worse, I think, because I think if you ask a lot of these people, they would still say that they believe relatively the same thing, and not to mention they would still tell you that they agree with the kind of people that would have been completely against this kind of stuff like 20 years ago. That's what they would tell you, but they're 100% wrong. And again, when I go through my list of things I really can't stand about the left, is that this is the main thing, and that, like I say, in the 90s and the 2000s, the punk bands and the actual quote unquote resistance, the people that they were most against, and rightfully so, was the Republicans and the conservatives. It was the George Bushes and Mitt Romneys of the world. Those are the perfect examples of people that they were most against, and rightfully so, for, mostly at least. Um, but now it's the exact opposite. I mean, George Bush, I believe he's came out in support of some Democrats. Same thing goes for Romney. He votes with them all the time. So again, not to mention those people haven't changed their minds too. Like, no point is George Bush completely disavowed anything he did as president. Like, if he did that, yeah, maybe that would make some sense. But they haven't changed. They haven't came out and said, yeah, I've completely changed my worldview over the last 5 to 10 years. They haven't done that. And the reason why is that they're still the same as they've always been. And this is the big problem, that being counterculture today, being punk, being the resistance, is wanting to have a stable two-parent household. It's, not wanting to have massive deficits. It's traditional, at least modern day traditional conservative stuff. That is the new counterculture. It's like what people like Paul Joseph Watson always say. and Zuby Music, these kind of people. That's what they talk about a lot, and they're absolutely right about. And this is something that it really bothers me, I guess, in that you talk to, like I mentioned at the start here, you talk to so many people and they still think the political spectrum's the same. Like like the echo chamber that these people live in is off the charts. And like I said, back in the 90s and the 2000s, the George Bushes and Mitt Romneys of the world, they were enemy number one. They were the worst of the worst according to these people, and they did definitely had majority stuff they were completely wrong and off about, which again, um, but again, these people now align more with the Democrats, which these people that claim to be the resistance align a lot more with, right? Which is just the pure insanity of the modern day. Like I don't get the thing that really boggles my mind that I think if I understood, perfectly, because I understand it to some degree, but if I understood it perfectly, I think that it would be one of the biggest things, going on, in that it really boggles my mind how people can hold such blatantly contradictory worldviews, like blatantly contradictory, not just a little bit contradictory, and either not even notice it or or not even care. Like, how did people do that and justify it in their minds? I'm really trying to figure it out. Like, how people, I know, again, I have my theories, but I don't think I fully understand it. I'll admit that. And I think the reason being is that people just want to they want to feel like they're part of the winning team. That, I think that's a big one, because like I say, most of these people that are doing this kind of stuff, most of the people that are on the left, that um, they're driven more emotionally, and they're driven more by emotion than they are by reason and evidence. They're driven more by emotion than they are by logic, by objective truth, right? That's just the reality. And again, I think there's other stuff going into it. I think that there's the fact that these people are more susceptible to propaganda, which means they'll believe whatever the mainstream media and the public schools tell them without any questions whatsoever. Um, all this kind of stuff, right? Like all this kind of stuff. And like I said, I think there's plenty of things to go into it, but I think those are the big ones. So anyway, like I say, I think that was a very interesting way, a very interesting point. That again, I've alluded to it a little bit before, but not as much to this extent. And I think saying you're programmed cheap is a very good way of putting it. In that, if they were actually counterculture and resistance, they would be against most of the stuff they're for, right? They would be against most of the stuff they're for. And I think the reality is that the people that are um, at the forefront of this group, they're people that want to push big government. I think that they're people that they're very good at manipulating people psychologically and emotionally. They're very good at that, because the leaders of these kind of groups are always very, very, very good at that. They're very good at that. And that's why they become so prominent, right? Like the leaders of these kind of groups, that's why they become so prominent. So anyway, that's what I wanted to bring up today. So if you liked the video, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Like I say, people always ask, what can you do to push back against the garbage? The big things are speak your mind, stop being so afraid. And number two, you got to support people that are pushing back against the mainstream media garbage. You got to support them as much as you possibly can. And that's going to be different for everyone. So that's up for people to decide. But anyway, like I say, all those links are in the description, so you can find them all there.